you. Okay, perfect. Yes, I can see your question. Hopefully you heard that. Sure, people coming in now. Okay, perfect. So, just towards some discussions. Yes. We're slow with the technology too. We're still figuring this out as we go. I think we're going to get started in just a few.
Can you hear me? Is my microphone on?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't see
cool.
you. But, yeah.
Oh no, that's okay. I've got my camera's turned off, but I didn't know if you could hear me or if I had to type.
Oh no, I can hear you. Yeah.
Cool.
Let's see. I guess I can answer one question really quickly. There's a viewer, I think, that's watching right now. He can't use the Q and A function. His name is Riz, and he asked if I ever lived in Bahrain, and I haven't. For the past 3 months, I just got back about 4 weeks ago from living in Jordan, and I absolutely love Jordan. I think Jordan is very unique country in the fact that it's very stable, but surrounded by a lot of countries in conflict or still in the midst of their Arab Spring movements, which, depending on who you're talking to, may or may not have already ended. Yeah, Jordan's a very special gem in the Middle East. Lots of history, very centralized location. So I would like to go to Bahrain one day. Leave the Facebook questions. Hopefully you heard that. And hopefully I answered your question, Riz. Thank you for asking.
Timira, can I ask a question, or have you got some lined up?
Sure, you can ask the question.
It's a really general one. I'm just wondering, with your kind of international work and things like that, I'm just wondering what your views might be on the EU currently and the whole Brexit situation, if you have any views on that.
I'm actually not too familiar with the European Union. I know that Britain is thinking about separating. Is that right? From the
indeed.
European Union. And I know from what it was explained to me by one of my good friends that is in Scotland, is that that Britain and the US have a lot of, it seems like a lot of influence together. So as far as US relations is concerned, I don't think, like, I think that's our one really big EU tie. So I think from my perspective, I think that's going to have a profound effect on our EU relations if Britain leaves. Economically, I'm not entirely, well, no, Britain's not in the EU economically, right? Or because they use the pound.
It's not within the Eurozone. It's not within the Eurozone, but we have certain like trade deals and things like that, which include us into free trade and things like that. So we have economic ties to them, but we're not included in the Eurozone in terms of the currency.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I definitely have to look more into it. But yeah, I hope that as little as I know.
No, it's interesting to hear it from a US point of view, because that has been one of my thoughts, that I think it will be a big deal for the US if we leave. So I'm happy to hear that I haven't just made that up.
yeah, definitely. Okay, Ivan, I can't hear you. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I had more questions coming in and I didn't even realize it. Okay. So Nabil, I hope I said your name right. asked, do you believe that movements around equality, such as Black Lives Matter, require leadership, a single of a collection of individuals grouping to leader the movement into maybe even a political party? Historically, I would say like Black Lives Matter and civil rights movements in the past have been centralized by one or two main leaders. Like civil rights was centralized around Malcolm X, around Martin Luther King. I do think around equality requires it definitely requires leadership, but it also requires leadership that allows different perspectives to occur, especially with this sort of new era that we are in with political and social movements. Not everybody is going to do a movement the same way. And that, especially now with 21st century movements having priority around utilage of technology and media to sort of garner support. And I think I'm not sure if Black Lives Matter is a movement that would benefit being centralized around one or two people, just because it's very grassroots with a collective impact as a collective rather than having an individual being centralized. And I don't think it's necessary to have Black Lives Matter as a political party. I think the point of it is not necessarily a political movement, but in the sense that whether you're Republican, you're Democrat, you're liberal, you're independent, the fact that I have Black skin, for example, it should matter in terms of police accountability and misconduct. So it doesn't need to be its own separate, it shouldn't be a movement at all. It should be something that's understood, that as human life, it needs to be respected accordingly. So yeah, hope that answered your question. I see that you're an activist and helped with the Million Man March. But as you are studying religion, what are your views on Christianity being used in the past as a tool to control African slaves and its significance today? I believe your name is Jose, but thank you for your question. My views on Christianity being used as a past to control African slaves. Christianity is very complicated, has very complicated history with colonization, not just of Africa, but of the Caribbean as well, and other places, not just by the British, but by the French, by the Portuguese. My views on it, I think, and the reason why I study religion, I'm not personally religious, but I study religion because as I also study political science. And one of the main things that I love to study is what drives people to make decisions, what influences people to make economic decisions, political decisions, social relationship decisions. So as a tool to, a tool of manipulation and as a tool of colonization, I feel that it was wrongly, things that were horrible were wrongly justified by religion. And I think that's a common cycle that happens where now you see with radical regimes such as ISIS, PKK, any regime that justifies its actions by religion is not actually religious, because they don't uphold the values of that religion or the beliefs. So yeah, and its significance today, I can give you perspective as an American, especially in a very conservative southern state where Christianity is constantly, we're supposed to have the separation of church and state, but that's not realistic at all. Christianity is used as a tool to justify discriminatory policies, and actions by the state. And people allow it. Like, I'm in North Carolina, and the South is called the Bible Belt for a reason. It's that law is ruled by the Bible, and the Bible solely. So it always has its premise in Christianity. So, it's very significant where I'm from. Okay. Okay, Spiela asks, do feminists have, wait, someone asked, do feminists have it the way their intentions? Oop. I'm sorry, I'm trying to, are their intentions to anti-men? If not, how can their messages be conveyed better? Okay, very good question. So feminism is often misconstrued as being anti-men, when in actuality, hold on, give me one second. So everybody knows which question I'm answering now. There we go. Feminism is very misconstrued, and the common misconception is that it is anti-men, when in actuality, it's just, I like to use the word equity instead of equality. For example, and I'll explain the difference real quick. Equity is more of, imagine a short person, a middle-sized person, and a taller person. And you're trying to see over a fence. I'm pretty sure some of you might have seen this graphic explaining the difference. So equity would mean that if the tall person can see over the fence, you don't give them anything. The middle and short people would give different sizes of, like, a step ladder, for example, to be able to see. So the shortest person would get the tallest step ladder, the medium-sized person would get a little bit smaller of a step ladder, and then the taller person would get nothing because they can already see. Whereas equality would give everybody the same step ladder to be able to see over the fence. Now the problem is, the taller person would get the most view, and then the middle-sized person would get more than the shorter person, and then the shorter person gets, you know, like, screwed over in the end, essentially. So that's the difference between equity and equality. And I like to say that feminism is more of equity between the genders, not exclusive to male and female, you know, cisgendered people. But yeah, so I hate that it's considered anti-men, because the movement actually does advocate for a lot of male equality as well, in terms of hyper masculinity, ending that, and sort of the issues around homophobia as well, with men in the United States. Do I think that the messages could be conveyed better? However, yes. I don't consider myself, I would say, a mainstream feminist, because a lot of the messages can be exclusive to one community. Like, you can have somebody who claims to be a feminist, but they are a feminist until the conversation includes equality for Black women, or equality for Latino women, or Hispanic women, or Arab women. When it comes to women of color, there's a divide in feminism, because there's also racism and issues with ethnicity and things like that. So messages for equity can definitely be conveyed better, but I think that takes some more equity in other areas as well, and working towards that. So. Okay. All right. Nabil asked, do you think there are comparatives towards the religious input during the civil rights movement to similar movements such as Black Lives Matter today? Not exactly with Black Lives Matter, and I would say this, because the civil rights movement definitely did start in the Black church, and it had a lot of its rooting in the Black church, and a lot of the influence surrounding mobilizing people from church and from Christianity. And also as well, not just Christianity, the other side of the movement with Malcolm X, with the Nation of Islam as well. With Black Lives Matter today, I would say it's not the case with having so much religious influence. Mobilizing the community, it has a lot to do with, I'm sure you have seen with social media, and it sort of brings together a lot of different people from a lot of different religious backgrounds and just many other backgrounds as well. So I see some comparatives in utilizing, mobilizing like actual people to mobilize against the issue of police accountability, but not with necessarily being religion, being centralized around religion. So. Okay, so from Spiela. Do you feel a feminization of the Black men is becoming a prominent thing? I do, especially within our own community. Not necessarily, I don't see it often with other communities sort of demasculating Black men, but I definitely do see it as a recurring problem within our own community. Fragile masculinity is very prominent. And I think that has a lot to do with the history of colonialization. And me personally, I feel that Black men have always been held to certain standards in the Black community that are unrealistic and has hindered Black men's ability to be themselves completely when you have to answer to your own community's societal standards. And that has a lot to do with a lot of issues with homophobia within the Black community as well, which has always been very prominent. I would say mostly due to Christianity. Well, yeah, I would say mostly, yeah. Historically, I would say, since I said before that a lot of these movements in the past were led by men. I'll give you an example, actually. I was actually just telling my friend this in Arizona, the fact that Martin Luther King was chosen to be the leader of the civil rights movement, even though he had an assistant, Bayard Rustin, who helped make Martin who he was. The only thing why Bayard Rustin wasn't the Martin Luther King was because he was gay. And the movement, like the civil rights leaders, couldn't put him at the front of the movement. So instead they have him groom Martin to be the center of the movement because Martin was a pastor. So there you have it. Hope that helped answer your question. Perfect. Donald Trump, he claims if he gains power, he'll make the Mexican pay for a Great Wall between US and Mexico. Unlikely, yeah, you're right. However, how seriously is he being taken in his other states? Do they not question the feasibility of some of his claims? To answer your question, unfortunately, he is being taken very seriously in his other states, mine included. I was very upset to find out that while I was in Jordan, North Carolina had a primary that I couldn't vote for because I was abroad, and Trump won for the Republican Party. So yeah, he is being taken very seriously. And no, not a lot of people question the feasibility of his claims. A lot of people like him, quote unquote, because he says, they think he's not like a politician because he says these outlandish things that people want, unfortunately, to happen. A lot of racist, sexist people want to happen, such as a wall between USA and Mexico. And he wants to remove, Muslims and Mexicans and all that stuff. My opinion, I mean, even the Republican Party doesn't like him, and they're not, I mean, Republicans are crazy, but they're not that crazy. So even if he unfortunately becomes president, I think that they'll just do the same thing, unfortunately, that they did with Obama, and sort of lock him in, not really have a lot of his stuff being passed. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, I don't think he'll actually have a lot of power if he actually does become president. Hopefully not. Okay. How hard was it putting together the Million Man March, and did you have any racial problems trying to set it up? So backstory, me and my friend were campus organizers originally for our campus. And then when we started working with the local chapter in Raleigh of the Nation of Islam, then we became area coordinators and organizers, which meant that we had to start organizing on more than one campus, more than start organizing in community centers to get more of the broader community to come. So that meant like selling tickets, doing events, speaking at certain places we were allowed to about attending the Million Man March. And I will say there weren't any racial problems with trying to set it up. There was sexism, definitely. And that was something that I had to, for the greater purpose, because the Million Man March is a very important historical part of the civil rights movement, and I think it's a very important event. I had to take a lot of sexism as a female organizer, especially a prominent female organizer in my area. For example, my partner is a man, and they would only have communication with him, even though he was splitting half of the work with me, and they didn't really respect the work that I was doing for them, which was very significant. I will say so myself, because once me and my partner Brandon came into their local chapter and started organizing, significant improvements started being made, but he was always given the credit, and communication was always with him and never through me. So I did experience a lot of sexism while setting it up. And it was, I will say there was I wouldn't say a racial problem. I think it's more of an issue with the idea of the Nation of Islam and Farrakhan, where the city of Washington, D.C. Organized another event that was happening at the same time that the Million Man March was occurring on the National Mall, despite our reasoning behind this is a very historical, this is a 20th anniversary. No other event should be going on that should be approved by the city. I will say that their race and religion sort of played a part. And who Farrakhan is as a leader, he's very controversial, had a part in the city allowing another event to take place while the Million Man March was occurring. So, okay. Do you feel that inequality forces us to make more of an impact in our individual lives? Do you feel that some form of inequality is necessary for society to function? I think honestly it depends on who you are. If inequality forces you to make an impact, because I know a lot of fellow Black people that choose not to get involved in Black Lives Matter or anything concerning, or the initiatives being taken place to eliminate the Black and brown vote or things like that, things that are taking away our civil liberties because we are Black. Some Black people don't get involved in it because they're just like, I'm just living my life. I'm not trying to be an activist or anything. So I think it just depends on the person. Me as an individual, I'm just the type of person, I don't like seeing inequality or any abuse by the state in any way, so I just have a passion to get involved. I will say that inequality does make an impact on growing up. Personally, as a Black person, growing up, you're instilled always that you're going to college. All the rights that were previously denied, like to my parents and my parents' parents, are made very important when growing up Black. Like, you're going to vote. I don't care who you're voting for, you're going to vote because my, grandparents, died for the right to vote. You're going to college, you're going to get a job, you're going to, all these things that we were denied once is very important growing up. Those values are very instilled in you. Do I feel inequality is necessary for society to function? For a capitalist society, definitely. But for a society that I would hope would be functional off of equality and equity alone, I don't think so. I don't think inequality is necessary for society to function. If we can just acknowledge that the differences between us, whether it's racial, ethnic, religious, actually makes for good rather than seeing differences as a bad thing, I think that society would be better off as a whole. So, thank you for your question. Okay. Barack Obama. Do you think he has properly acknowledged the Black Lives Matter movement, as I do not recall any speeches being made by him around police brutality? Is he meant to be impartial as a president in case of backlash, i.e. Beyonce's Super Bowl? This is I'll say this. If he's acknowledged it, which to my recollection, I don't remember any specific speeches about police brutality, I could be wrong, that the president has made, which if I can't acknowledge it, then there's probably your answer right there. But is he supposed to be impartial? I don't think so. I don't think that's the role of a president, whether or not to choose which issues you're going to be impartial on and which issues you're going to be more forward on. And I think that's sort of my issue with politics all in general, but that's another conversation. But I just think that as a person, as a Black man, I do think there's more that he can do to address Black Lives Matter and to address police accountability and brutality. I understand that, especially as a president of color, not a lot of what he's going to say, just like in the past, is going to be sort of heard in our representation in Congress, Senate, things like that. And there's racism involved in that too. But I do think there's more acknowledgement that could be there. But he doesn't have long as a president anymore now. So yeah. All right. Question from Jordan. Arabic, how are you finding it? How does one learn it or even begin to understand? So I started studying Arabic in high school. One, because I was terrible at Spanish. And two, I was 5 when 9/11 happened. And now that I'm older, I sort of reflect back on the responses from the adults in my life. And a lot of the responses that I now reflect on is it was xenophobic. It was an unnecessary fear about an entire culture, about an entire ethnicity, about an entire religion. And getting older, I just wanted to learn more about Arabs, about Islam, and the first thing that I decided to do was learn Arabic. And that's still one of my goals for learning Arabic is to be able to read the Quran in its original text and the original Arabic, which I'm starting to do a little bit of, so I'm making a lot of progress. So I just came back 4 weeks ago from studying in Jordan. I studied Arabic, Fusha, and Amiya, which is Fusha is modern standard Arabic, and Amiya is dialect Arabic. So I learned some of the dialect that is used in Jordan, which some of the dialect that is used in Jordan is widely used across the Levant as well, which is this, the Levant is like a group of countries like Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, around that area. So how does one learn it? Start with the alphabet, because once you learn the alphabet and how exactly Arabic, when you learn the alphabet, you learn how Arabic is sort of structured. And that's pretty much, that's one of the first things, that is the first thing you do. And the rest of the language will sort of come natural after that. So I started with that, and I also just started with, you know, teaching my friends. I have one friend that is taking, I believe he's in 102 Arabic now, that I tutor from time to time. And I think the more that you speak it, the more that you read. Watch a lot of TV shows in Arabic. It's really fun, and it's also, you start hearing those words being used and used over and over again. Once you get your listening, I think you can read and write and speak a lot better. One show that is really funny is part of the show is in English, part is in Arabic. And when they speak Arabic, they have English translations. It's on YouTube. It's called My American Neighbor. And it's actually shot and filmed in Amman, Jordan, where I stayed. And it's a really funny show. Also, Al Jazeera streams live on YouTube every day in Arabic. So just type in Al Jazeera Arabic and yeah, you'll be able to start listening. And for me, I'm a very listening heavy learner. So everything's centralized around listening. And that's how I learn best, with understanding. So thank you for your question. Okay, this is the last one from Spiela. North Carolina passed an anti-gay bill recently. Do you feel the state will suffer terribly for this in terms of business not operating there because of inequality? So what Spiela is referring to is House Bill 2, HB 2, as it's commonly called, concerning transgendered bathrooms, which existed in a bigger city, Charlotte, North Carolina, which is about 4 hours away from me, I believe, where some restaurants, local businesses, had the option for people to use a gender, how do I put it? I'm sorry, I'm like trying to find a word to describe the bathroom. Gender neutral, there you go. A gender neutral bathroom, to where if you identified as a male or if you identified as a female, you know, you could just use that bathroom and it'd be fine, rather than just using the bathroom that aligns with your sex. So to get this initiative passed all across North Carolina was that was an initiative that more people wanted across North Carolina, not just in Charlotte. And House Bill 2 eliminated the possibility of that happening. And I hear some of the arguments for why it was turned down. A lot of people are like saying that is more for protection. I hear the argument that having gender neutral bathrooms allows for pedophiles to prey on kids. My personal feeling on that is that there can be one where sort of encouraging rape culture and pedophilia, but not doing anything remotely effective to already defeat, you know, the issue that was already there before the transgendered argument with the bathrooms was even there. I think there's definitely more we can do with cisgendered predatory like male and women, men and women now, than with blaming and sort of putting those issues on an entire community that is, you know, making that generalization about an entire community, just sort of having them as scapegoats for already existing communities, I think is ridiculous. And the state is already suffering terribly because of the decision. So Google was planning on expanding into North Carolina, and after HB2, they're like, nope, not going to do it. PayPal was also thinking of expanding, and they said that they weren't. In 2017, so spring 2017, North Carolina and Charlotte was supposed to host, or technically still is the host city for the NBA All-Stars game. And the NBA, that's now pending. The NBA hasn't, to my knowledge, hasn't made a decision yet on that, but we might lose NBA All-Stars. So we are suffering. And because of that decision, actually, our governor has come out and said that he wants changes made to House Bill 2, not because he has a change of heart or that he's a good person in that sense, but because of the economic consequences that has come because that bill has passed. Okay. These questions are great, by the way. Okay. MLK were at the forefront of the civil rights movement and can even be considered as a leader. How prominent is the church within Black Lives Matter? Not as prominent as a civil rights movement. The civil rights movement started in the church, whereas Black Lives Matter started with like utilization of media and social media and things like that. And you have like a collaboration of all different people and all different backgrounds coming together, not just from one community being prominent. So yeah, I would say religion is not that prominent in Black Lives Matter. Okay, Tristan asks, do you believe the Black Lives Matter movement is a temporary phenomenon or has longevity? While I do respect and support activism, I believe economic warfare is ultimately what will bring change and is the only thing that will bring change. I think Black Lives Matter does have longevity. It's very misunderstood, which is the only thing I think could hinder a lot of movements actually. But yeah, Black Lives Matter, I want to say 2012, not necessarily 2012, it didn't have a name, but 2012 is definitely, I want to say, or maybe even before that, but around 2011, 2012 was when we had the first, one of the first national cases. Well, I won't say national, but one of the most prominent national cases to date of an instance with an unjust trial with the Trayvon Martin case and concerning police misconduct and accountability, as well in the criminal justice system, the issues with that. So it definitely does have longevity as far as gaining support and having tangible solutions and policy. I think that has a lot why, I mean, since 2011, 2012, we're still having the same issues as people's reluctancy to understand that Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that all other lives don't. It's just we're focusing on the Black ones because we're the ones that are being shot and killed unfairly by police. And we're very much abused in the criminal justice system. So reluctancy to understand, to listen, I think has a lot to do with why like national legislation or national action in concerns to police accountability and misconduct and criminal justice reform hasn't happened yet. As far as economic warfare, if you could explain what exactly you mean by that. I'm assuming that you mean sort of the Black community not investing in corporations, or I hope that's what I'm not really sure what you mean by economic warfare. If you can explain that, and I'll address that later, I would appreciate it. So. Do you feel that Islam is or has gone through the same transition as other religions, such as the Christianity, to create more divide and suffering than peace and spirituality? Yes, I do. Especially when you study religion in terms of the Sunni and Shia divide. I definitely, there's a lot of conflict there where you see predominantly a lot of Shia communities being attacked in countries that are primarily Sunni. And I think that has caused a divide. And there's other sections of Islam as well that, well, I won't say that those have caused more of a divide than the Sunni and Shia ongoing conflict. And there's also a divide as well against those that are believers in Islam, those who are Muslim, and those who are a part of radical regimes, which I think a lot of time gets looked over, especially in the United States. I'll say one thing we don't do well enough is understand the difference between radicalism and terrorism and religion concerning Islam. When we don't, I don't like that with ISIS. It's like the way it's framed here is that as the United States, we are the direct target of ISIS. Or when in fact, you look at areas of Syria, they're destroying and killing Muslims. And it's like, we're not the direct target in that case. We're not the ones that are being killed. Muslims are being killed. Not even that, people that are in those areas are being targeted, not necessarily us, people in Syria, people in Lebanon. They're the ones that are immediately affected. Our efforts should be more towards helping them and helping understand the difference between terrorism and radicalization and Islam, in promoting more of a humanitarian response rather than what most people want in the United States, which is a strictly military response in ending terrorism. But understanding the difference, I think, would garner more of a humanitarian response. It can garner a military response also, but a humanitarian response with that would be to sort of help those affected, which happen to be Muslims, rather than just going in to kill, the ISIS people, PKK, what have you, and then just cause a lot of destruction in the end. And then still have this sort of cycle that we have had in the United States with Islamophobia. So. Let's see. Right. Recently, to mark Sandra Bland's death, they have named a street after her. Oh, I didn't know that. Even though this may be seen as a nice gesture, I still believe this does not address the issue, more so cover up police brutality. In my view, I want justice, not a street. Views, I want justice, not a street also. A lot of initiatives like that are taken to cover up racism, to cover up any sort of issue concerning a marginalized community. For example, I go to North Carolina State University here, but in Chapel Hill, there's the University of North Carolina, and they had a hall that was called Saunders Hall, which was named after the founder of the KKK, or the Ku Klux Klan, if you're not familiar. They removed the name, so is no longer called Saunders Hall, but the students, a lot of students they signed a petition to remove the name as Saunders Hall and replace it with Tubman Hall in honor of Harriet Tubman. But the school also refused to do that, and they just named it Carolina Hall. So that's an example of just covering up the issue and not really addressing it. That's another example. And that's just frequent, it's cyclical in the United States. So, okay. Politicians do what their donors want, as they are who put them in power. If you want to change the justice system, you need to command an economic machine. The disenfranchised are perpetually downtrodden. Oh, okay, thank you. This is what Trisha means. So you're right. Command an economic machine. Yeah, I think I agree. There's a lot of money in politics, and that's another issue. All of these issues are intersectional, but that's something long term I would like to see, but immediate, having that sort of power in corporations as marginalized people, and having that power with money in politics is something that's very, very hard to obtain. So I think people are looking for more immediate solutions to, and who's to blame, because this is an issue that is requiring almost an immediate response, as the statistic is now 2 people in every 28 hours are being shot by police, 2 Black people. So it's requiring a more immediate response, which is a policy change, which I'm a part of an initiative in the area called PACT, which is Police Accountability Community Task Force. And we have been able to influence the conversation of policy change concerning police misconduct and police brutality in the area. So I can say for myself, with the work that I do in legislative development, in my area, we have had a pretty impressive impact already with getting the conversation started in legislation about the use of body cameras, the use of having a police accountability community board that can be an oversight board over police policy and how they conduct, for example, like stopping searches and things like that. So that's more of what other communities throughout the United States are starting to implement as well. Ten minutes left. Oh. Yes. Okay. We can also talk about the journal you're looking to introduce into the as well. Okay, so thank you guys so much for all the great questions. This is a great Q&A. Thank you for Spiela for having me be the first webinar speaker. I'm very honored and flattered to be able to have this opportunity. I'll introduce this on the Spiela page also, but what Spiela is referring to is a journal that I will be creating in collaboration with Spiela and hoping to get some other organizations on board. I'll give a backstory, sorry, I hope you can't hear that in the background, somebody's doing yard work. But with a lot of social justice issues that we discussed during this webinar, as well as economic justice, environmental justice, they're talked about a lot in academia. But the problem I have with this is that academia is very elitist and very exclusive. So academics like myself, as a student, or those who are professors or have their doctorates, they write their critiques and theories of society, but they don't write it for the community to be able to be a part of the conversation that's essentially about them. and they don't write it in the jargon to where those in the community would be able to understand, you know, their critiques of their own community. And also to be able to access this information, you have to be a part of the academia world, meaning you either have to subscribe to a journal, which is very costly depending on what journal you want, or you have to go to a pretty big institution like a university. Other than that, you're not involved in this conversation that I think is very vital for the community. So I want to start this online journal that is for the people, by the people. I would say have contributors from all around the world sort of have joined in this conversation about social justice, about economic justice, about environmental justice, any issues that affect your community. I want the ability to have any person who wants access to this information be able to have it. So I'll post more about this on the Facebook group, and I'm looking for now organizations to join mine as well as Spiela in sort of shaping and designing it at first, and then looking for members as well, like influencers just like Spiela, to sort of be contributors to the main contributors to a journal, as well as inspire others to sort of join in as well. So more for that will be coming soon. I want to thank everybody for coming on to the live stream and for your wonderful questions. And that is it. So thank you guys so much. Oh, wait, one more thing. You can find me on social media as well. Just gonna sound myself out. If there's a place I can type, yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Timira Conely, and Instagram, Timira __ Conely. So that's where you can find me. The first one's Twitter, the second one is Instagram. And yeah, thank you guys so much.